Today we'll be presenting our capstone project, Escape Canin. Our project focused on creating a simulated business environment that included both a customer-facing website and a secure network infrastructure. We built a bakery website while also configuring servers, databases, routers, firewalls, and virtual machines within a virtual environment. Once the environment was completed, another team performed penetration testing to identify any vulnerabilities and weaknesses in our system. But who is Escape Canin? So Escape Canin was designed as a fictional bakery business offering baked goods, catering services, and baking classes. We also included a rewards system to simulate customer engagement features commonly used in real businesses. The website acts as the public-facing side of the project, while the infrastructure supported the business operation in a safety manner. So as we can see, I have put some screenshots of how our business was portrayed and how it will look for any type of customers that wanted our service. So this slide shows the timeline of our project over 8 weeks. In the beginning, we focus on planning, setting up the virtual environment, and building the website and network. During the middle stages, penetration testing was conducted to identify any weaknesses. The final focuses were more on documentation, troubleshooting, and preparing for our final presentation. This slide shows the network architecture we created. Our environment included routers, firewalls, Windows, and Linux systems, databases, servers, and web services within a DMZ network. The firewall helps separate and secure the internal network from public-facing systems. So a major part of this project was teamwork and collaboration because the project involved networking, cybersecurity, and web development. Each team member contributed different technical skills. Although we faced challenges with configuration and troubleshooting throughout the whole project, we successfully built a functioning and secure environment. Um, During this project, my main responsibility focused a little more on documentation, website support, and functionality testing. I work on making sure the website features and code were functioning properly, including navigation and ordering features. I also was able to stay on top of the pen test week just to make sure that everything was running smoothly, and I was able to engage a little bit on the Discord as well. I also help organize documentation, track project progress, as like mentioned on the chart before, and document issues and solutions throughout the project. While other members focus more on networking and firewall configuration, my role focus more on the website build and overall use use using. Overall, this project was able to teach me a lot. I had never been a really good technical person because I am more a little more with documentation and planning, but I was able to learn a lot from my teammates and I am taking a lot of skills and knowledge from them. So I am really grateful that I was able to be part of this project and I believe it will be something that I can take with me for my future goals and projects in the future. Um, Something that I would have liked to change during this project maybe is to be a little more on top of it. It went by really fast, and I was really busy all the time, so I could lose a little of track of time and stuff like that. So maybe that, and maybe really making sure that all the code is actually working properly and that we're actually using the proper documentation throughout the whole project.
Good evening, everyone. We are here to talk about the project portion, Dog Park. We were Dog Park 3. Our business was Canin, which is like a bakery. My portion to speak about was the network foundational blocks. Um, so in this part, this was like the beginning stages of building not only our network, our company, what we were gonna sell, everything that has to do from like ground zero and up. This part of the port, this part of the um, building blocks were so fundamental. Um, we learned a lot in this section. It was like a slow start due to the fact that we felt like we were trying to chip down a whole mountain. So we were struggling on to see how to get that started. What networks are a little delicate because some things you can't start without the others. They're kind of going hand in hand. So we kind of wanted to see what needed to be done first. It was a lot of meetings, a lot of brainstorming. Gratefully, we were a team of eight, so a lot of us had a lot of great ideas, and it was very collaborative in the beginning. Um, this was no small task. I think from this portion was where we were able to get everyone's strength and weaknesses. Everyone was able to voice what they were good at, what they weren't good at, and that's what took us to the next slide, which would be the individual portion. So my individual portion and this section, um, mine, I was the one that kind of deep dived. We didn't know what we were doing. There's a few of us that deep dived. I was one of those. I set up the LAN. Well, I intended to set up the LAN, WAN, and the DMZ. Also, configuring the Kali machine. It was not an easy task at all. Obviously, I've had my own personal challenges through this project, which made it very difficult for me to give it as the time that it properly needed, plus being a mom of a little guy. So, this very quickly we found out that these segments and this portion, the building blocks of the foundation, it took more than just, your typical assignment hours of 2 to 6 hours, 2 to 4. We even had someone process it for like 8 hours. So I struggled a lot. Luckily, my teammates were able to help me out through this portion. Not only did I do that, but I also went with Dr. Nesser and used the GAs that we had to get me started the biggest challenge was just time, essentially time. Like I mentioned, I'm a mother of a small baby. Time is not my biggest like strong point. I don't have a lot of it, but worked into the night type whole things. Another success for me was just learning. I felt like I went with bare minimum like knowledge into this, but I felt like I learned so much from this segment, so much from failing. I failed a lot. The LAN was not easy. I had to switch the IPv4 and the IPv5 when I was configuring it because I had switched it, so I gave the wrong IP. And yeah, it was a whole thing just taking steps back and kind of starting from block zero again to move forward. I also installed the CSET tool. That was a challenge in itself because we needed an SQL and I tried different machines. So we were very blessed to have such a cool team to help me out during this process. It was very cohesive. Um, but yes, I think from this more part, I think I learned more than my failures and my successes. I feel like this was such a great uh, project to understand what we're doing in the real world. And I was super grateful for this opportunity. And I personally learned a lot. Coding is very delicate in certain things. Building a network is not a small task like people may think. Segmenting and permissions and all that stuff, that it's all intricate. You cannot do one part without the other, and everything is like it's like a spider web that goes hand in hand.
Hello, my name is Yousef Saleh, and this is my submission for Team 3 group, Dog Park, also known as Espaki Canin, which is dog park in French. Um, we have a bakery that offers baking classes and a reward system built into our system. Um, so today I'm going to talk about a couple things, starting with our network's foundational blocks, and then I'm going to go into what I did for the project, and then I'm going to go into our pen test week analysis, and lastly, what we could fix network-wise. So to begin, our journey began with a unified vision, working in lockstep to build more than just a business. We meticulously pieced the network architecture together through collective problem solving and shared technical expertise. But we did have a lot of hardships and hurdles to overcome, starting with early technical hurdles and refining the initial group workflow under pressure. Initially, we really didn't know where we wanted to go with the project, nor did we know how to start. And after a couple group meetings, we figured out that we wanted to do a bakery and eventually started to build out schedules for people to be able to meet because our schedules were so far unaligned that it became a little tough for us to properly be able to communicate other than just over text. Um, and we didn't start doing this until about week 5 or 6, so it took us a little bit to get the ball rolling. But once we got the ball rolling, it kept going. Um, so some things that we were successful in was launching the network core and establishing a resilient group dynamic. Towards the end, we ended up figuring out everyone's schedules and we started to work around all that. And we were able to join meetings more together. Um, we were t texting a lot more, and we were just much more in line with each other, and everyone was on the same page, which was really good. Now I'm going to go into what I did for the project. So I built the DNS zones for internal LAN and DMZ. I set up a domain controller and added Windows client to the domain. I set up the firewall, but failed. I'll get to that in a little bit here. I also configured the communication between routers and the firewall. Additionally, I configured the IP addressing on the Linux device. So like I mentioned before, I had failed in setting up the firewall. So after I failed, I made a static route, which fixed a lot more than just the firewall, including an issue that we ran into with DNS, where the start of authority was not coming up and not allowing clients to join the domain, which was a very big issue. So all I had to do for that was rebuild the DNS zone and wait for it to build the remaining folder structure. By doing this, it gave our clients the ability to join the domain, making that part of our system functional. Now I'm going to get into excuse me. Now I'm gonna get into our pen test week analysis. So overall, we identified 5 things during the audit, 2 of them being critical, 3 of them being medium. The most critical ones involved the default Zabbix credentials and hard-coded credit card data in public client-side JavaScript. So some of the fixes that we came up with were rotating all default credentials immediately, remove hard-coded secrets from source code, move auth controls to server-side logic, and implement bcrypt or Argon 2 for hashing. Next, I'm going to talk about what we could fix network-wise as a group. So for starters, data and secrets management. This keeps test data and secrets out of public files and stores them safely on a server instead. This is an issue we ran into because we noticed that a lot of our data and a lot of our secrets had a lot of vulnerabilities and could easily get hacked and just taken. Um, so we would like to fix that. Additionally, access auditing, which is review user accounts and audit logs to make sure no one created hidden or unauthorized access. Next, we have system restrictions, which limit access to important systems such as Zabbix portal or trusted users, um, to trusted users or trusted network locations only. Um, Lastly, we have layered protections, which keep using firewalls, segmentation, and monitoring because they help stop deeper attacks. Another thing that we can do is just change the default Zabbix username and password right away so attackers couldn't log in as easily. Um, and yeah, that is my submission for our project, Team 3 Dog Park, Spaki Canin. Thank you for listening.
Hello there, my name is Jose Flores, and I am part of Team 3 in the DogPark project. So here, let me start off by walking you through the network that we built. This diagram is going to be showing all the devices and how they're connected across different zones. At the top here, we're going to have our BIOS WAN router, and this is essentially the gateway to the outside world. Right behind that, we're going to have our OPN Sense firewall. And what this is going to be doing is pretty much handling all of our WAN, LAN, DMZ, and OBT1 zones. On the internal side now, we have another BIOS router handling all the LAN traffic. pretty much this is when one of them is facing the interface facing the firewall, and the other one is going to be serving the internal LAN. Inside the LAN here, we got our Windows 11 client and our Active Directory and our DNS servers, as well as our RHEL clients, all sitting in the 192.168 to one, or sorry, one range. Our DMZ hosts and our web server and our database servers are all sitting in the 10.0.1 range. And this is pretty much to keep them isolated from from the main LAN, which is exactly how you want it in a real environment. I was also the one who set up the email server in the environment and configured email accounts so we could actually send and receive emails across the network. That was one of my personal contributions to getting the internal services running. We also had a Kali security desktop in the WAN side for testing, a tracker for the LAN for monitoring the traffic as well. Each device had a specific role and getting all of the IPs so they could actually talk to each other correctly, and took a real coordination for the team. All right, so how do we put this together, you may ask? This is what this is going to be covering, this slide here. It's pretty much the foundation of how we worked. It really started with the strategic collaboration, nobody owned the whole thing alone. We had to set up meetings so that we could actually talk to one another, see what schedules work the best to divide the responsibilities of this project. We were trying to figure out, who was going to be setting up the firewall rules, the routing between the zones, or just pretty much setting up servers. Like, for example, mine was the email servers. The network architecture, sorry about that, came through together, a lot of back and forth. It was a shared problem solving, and honestly, just being willing to ask each other for help was one of the biggest things here. We would actually try to divide the groups into pairs so that way we could bounce off each other and see where we could help out and when one was failing or just couldn't configure anything, that's what we were trying to do there. But as almost every project, it's not always smooth. Early on we had technical hurdles, configurations weren't routing correctly, services that weren't even talking to each other how they should have been. Those were moments that we had to go back, and rethink our approach on that. But as well as we had our losses, we had our wins as well. Well, getting like the network core and running, having the traffic flow correctly from the WAN through the firewall, through the LAN, all that was a very big milestone win. On my end, I was helping generating that network traffic to help the test environment. Sending and receiving emails through the server that I configured was a direct way to verify that was actually flowing across correctly on the network. And more than that, our technical success that we came out as a group dynamic that actually works. We learned how each person's around our group thinks, and that's what made us more effective as well. All right. Now this slide is what we can fix. No project is, like I mentioned before, is perfect. That we always gonna have our up and downs here, but being part of being a good team is being able to be honest with ourselves and see that what is going to be needing the improvement. So to start off, we have the data and secret management. Right now, some of the test credentials and sensitive data are sitting in places that they shouldn't be. A good fix probably could be that we could set aside a server-side storage for them. That way they're to keep them out of the shared files. Another was access auditing. Access auditing is very important because it goes through user accounts and audit logs to verify that there was no unauthorized access that was created, whether it was intentionally or on accident during the setup. This is especially relevant for my part on this email server that I configured because we need to make sure that those accounts are locked and that there is no unauthorized mailboxes that were created is exactly the kind of auditing that the auditing catches. Third would be the system restrictions. Access to sensitive systems should be locked down to trusted users and trusted network locations only. Right now, it's more open than it should be. And lastly, we have our layered protections here. this is good. This is good news for our firewalls and networks. Implementation actually worked. So this helped prevent attacks from going in any deeper. And a good takeaway for this would be having those to keep those layers in place and just keep building on top of that. Um, Another thing would be our Zabbix username and password credentials. Changing the default ones is a must, just because we know that there are the first thing that attackers will always go for. Overall, though, I'm very proud of what we built. It's a real functioning multi-zoned, network, and it's knowing what to fix is just as important as what we did right. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. My name is Daniel Morelos. I was part of the team 3 for this capstone this semester. I will be talking about my portions and everything else that I took care of this semester and completed for the capstone. So I should preface with saying that overall, I'd like to say that this capstone was a very good learning experience. I was able to learn a lot on what I was able to do, what I was able to put into the project, and relying on my group members in order to complete certain things. I realize that we may have started off bumpy, but I feel that the way the group progressed was very well done. And when we needed most to, we pushed forward and we were able to complete things. So we were in charge of naming, or I was more in charge within the later stages of the database development, web development, and the actual website, along with taking care of the website during pen test week and adding more things. So overall, I would like to say that it was a very fun learning experience. It was also very frustrating at times. I really feel that sometimes I would do something and then something else would break, and that really sometimes just kind of killed the motivation for me. But I realized at the end we're obviously given something that was broken with the way of us needing to fix it. And feel that even though our product wasn't polished well, it's still rough around the edges. I feel that we delivered, and I believe that Team 3 did very well on what we could, but there was much more room to improve. And this is more on my side where I realized now after the fact that had I more time and had I put more time into the project, I feel like I could have done far more and left a more polished experience for the Orange team. So to begin with Espace Canin. This was something we developed with the group, and we decided that it was something we wanted to pursue and continue with the bakery. So once we had the general idea down, we wanted to get the general aesthetic down. I had proposed that I would be able to vibe code and code some of it myself to reach some of that, I guess, rustic feel. And I feel that with the prototypes I had more so towards the start of the web test or the pen test week for DogPark, I had delivered, but again, given more time, I would have been able to refine it more to be more secure and much more fun. So again, I'd like to go on the slides with, I think, the foundational blocks. I would like to say that within our group, we all had tasks that we all accomplished, and I believe we did very well to keep on task and to do these tasks in an orderly time. However, I felt that sometimes we would fall behind, and I'm not exempt from this. I fell behind myself a lot. It took a while. But overall, I'd say that it was well done. We accomplished everything we needed to and had a running website with a okay backend and a decent front end. So I was in charge of completing the database, the front end and back end of the website. I connected the database. I installed MariaDB myself, and I worked on. I apologize. I worked during the first portion of the week when the dog park test was happening by logging, auditing, and checking. But I think a very big challenge I had that I had to get around very quickly was the week before dog park week. There was a issue. This was my doing, and so I had brought it upon myself to fix it. But I had accidentally locked one of our machines out. So I had gone into recovery mode and spending a couple hours, I had reset our password to where we would be able to reset it and log back into the machine. And doing this, I had completed successfully. I did this by a lot of online tutorials, but I was able to finally get something working, and at the end, it all worked out properly. But Apart from that, I feel that the development of the website was also a very big key point into getting something well. I would like to thank Mice for helping me a lot, along with other group members like Zara and Priscilla with the database and the website themselves by adding little things, giving me honest input, and other portions of the website that they themselves also completed, along with portions that Priscilla completed on the database, which helped me and the whole team out immensely. But one thing that I really wanted to make sure very quickly was that I would be able to very quickly adjust, add, remove things from the website itself. So something that I had thought, because I am a intern with a company right now, and we use GitHub very extensively, was to install GitHub on the web server. And the that would basically allow me to send pull requests, send push requests in order to upload things from the GitHub website, like the website. So minor pushes, minor changes, things that weren't hard coded in, take those out and put them into the newest one on the web server without having to go manually code it in and so on. So I feel that was a very smart way of going around it. And it was really, really good because it allowed us to really just. I apologize. I had a timer set up and I've gone over the time, so I'll be quick. But I feel like that it really allowed us to set anything on the website and upload it within minutes. And I still feel very proud of that. But along with the website itself, I feel that it was really well done with a group where we really finished what we needed to do on the actual website. So I realize now that a challenge I had a lot was adding features that I wouldn't really finish. A lot of the group fixed those for me, but there were still at the end two pages, primarily the contact us page and the final location page, that did not work. I believe Orange Team's pen test report included this. So this was just me adding more functionality to the website while other features weren't obviously broken. I feel that is my biggest challenge. I had completed more things. But another thing I'd like to also mention is that within during the week, and this is also readable on the Dog Park Discord. So far, I'd like to say that was a bigger challenge where I would feel that once we would start with certain things or we would get further into them, we would start forgetting about the foundational aspects of it. And because of that, we would leave a lot of things empty and open or broken. In case a lot of the stuff that I had on the web page, like the forum, had been constantly breaking, the contact us and the location page weren't obviously working either. They were just leading to 404s. But I feel that with the launching of the database, the launching of the website, that little GitHub, which I still feel very proud of, that little function on GitHub worked very well. So for I think challenges wise, to summarize it, was I'm very focused on adding stuff without finishing it. And I will continue to add stuff without completing the previous thing. This is where I need to improve. However, I feel that my successes are just my technical ability on being able to kind of curve around or find an easier way to do it. Not in the sense to mean I'm lazy, but in a way that I will try to find an easier way to complete a task if possible.
Hello, Max here. So for the project, what I did basically, I got into the project like more in depthly when we had like a plan to start configuring the Kali machine and everything. And when that plan got kind of like pivoted because we kept having trouble figuring out how to set things up, I basically had time on my hands. So basically, I set up most of all the machines. So I started basically from the bottom up instead of the top down. So I started with I believe it was I think, I, I think it was the client machines first, and then I went to the web server, and then I went up to LAN, and then the different clients on the other side, and then I did the Kali. But basically, what I did basically, I kind of mapped out all of basically the network IP addresses and everything. And also, after that, then I went and tried to fix, basically set up the firewall and then also the web server. And the web server had like a problem. Basically, the VM image of the actual machine had like an error in it. So I had to use a system prep tool, to basically restart it, and then I had to reconnect all redo the network settings on that. So that was one of the issues that took me a good like 4 hours to troubleshoot what was going on with all the logs and everything I did. And then I would say something that like really helped with this project was using AI in the sense of like helping figure out like with troubleshooting the point like different issues we're having. Because I was using the school ChatGPT to basically show like if I was stuck, I would screenshot my screen and then like tell them what was going on. Like, hey, can you direct me of like hey, what I can do? And it normally tell me like, oh, it could be this. You should look in these directions, and I would do that. But I would say that was like something that was really good. Something that we can improve that I felt like that I was like, oh yeah, we've got to do that was was to basically make sure that we replaced all the credentials of the defaults. We were really good on that with everything else, but the one thing we didn't do was for the network tracker that we had on Kali. We forgot to change that, which was one of the key what's it called vulnerabilities that the pen testing found. But you will hear more about that in the later slide. But in all, not in all, well, in all of the project itself, it went well. Our teamwork was going well. I would say the only thing as like a team that we need to fix was just like communication in the sense of like deadlines and stuff. Um, Speaking of that, since I mostly set up all the machines and to let people my other teammates that have like work to do, I basically changed a role instead of like getting setting stuff up. I basically became like a what's called like a network manager in the sense of like making sure everyone had like their tasks and like making sure everything got done. And so I kind of shifted, sorry, shifted that into that role. But most of all, it was pretty fun. Oh, the other thing that that was kind of like an issue that we were had to figure out was how tight we wanted our firewall to be, because if we made it too tight, we were having problems connecting our different devices for traffic, and then if we had it too wide, it would be vulnerable. So we were just figuring that out, and then which I helped with, and then the other thing that we that was actually pretty fun to do was the website. I helped on that too. The with the coding, we basically used what's called anti-gravity, Google's basically coding chatbot to help like code our website. And we kind of basically with that we kind of did it outside machines, and then we opened up our VMs to access Wi-Fi. So we basically moved that code through the Wi-Fi on like what was it? I think our like shared storage basically, and then we basically just moved the code into our actual directory for our website for that, which was a good idea on one of my teammates that did the most side of the website, and then I just helped with the different aspects of it. But yeah, that was actually really fun to do. And all this project was really fun to work with all my other teammates. So yeah.
Hello, my name is Priscila Cruz Garcia from DogPark Team 3, and at the beginning of the project, our team focused on building the foundational network environment based on the provided network diagram, and during this phase, we configured systems, verified communication between devices, and worked through several early connectivity and configuration issues. For my portion specifically, I worked on adding the WAN return routes and testing connectivity for that, and confirming the forward and reverse DNS zones were functioning correctly. And these steps helped verify the communication across the environment was working properly before moving on into like the later stages of the project. So for my part of the project specifically, I mainly worked on networking configuration, database integration, and implementing the website's registration and login functionality. One of the first things I worked on was configuring the WAN return route, like I mentioned in the previous slide. After adding the route, I tested connectivity by pinging, and initially the connectivity tested fail, but luckily one of my teammates was able to figure out that it was a firewall misconfiguration. And once the rules were corrected on that, the communication between the two machines worked successfully. After that, I verified the DNS forward and reverse lookup zones to ensure hostnames and IP addresses were resolved correctly throughout the environment, and this helped confirm the network infrastructure was functioning properly before we moved on to the later portions of the project. The next major task I worked on involved the MariaDB database and the website authentication system. The front-end website already existed visually, but the registration and login functionality were not fully connected to the back-end database yet. So I first updated the MariaDB users table using SQL by altering the table structure to support password storage and user authentication. And then after that, I worked directly on the website files hosted on the Windows web server machine. I created backend PHP files such as the register.php, login.php, and logout.php to handle user registration, authentication, and session management. The sign up form for the website for registering new users already existed on the front end, but it was not actually connected to the database. So I modified the functionality so that when users submitted their information to the form, their information would be processed through the PHP backend and inserted correctly into the MariaDB database. I also updated the login system so users could authenticate against stored database records. And to improve security, passwords were stored. Uh, I made it so that passwords were stored using hashing instead of just plain text storage. And one of the biggest challenges during this whole process involved communication between the front end, back end, and database layers. A lot of the troubleshooting centered around the app.js file because parts of the JavaScript in there would still reference old functionality or completely incorrect files after the new PHP authentication files that I added. So to fix this, I had to carefully comb through and update JavaScript references so the front end interacted with the correct backend PHP files. That also involved like commenting out portions of the existing code, especially for like some button stuff was going. There's some button logic going on and element references as well. Because parts of the previous implementation conflicted with the new authentication flow I was creating. So another challenge was that the registration system was sometimes partially work but failed in other areas due to small inconsistencies again between the layers. So just to sort of the way I sort of worked through this in troubleshooting was that I had to create like test accounts and verify directly inside MariaDB whether records were being inserted correctly. So I was like switching back and forth constantly between the database machine we had and the web server machine. And once registration was functioning properly, I tested the login process multiple times as well to confirm that authentication, password hashing, and redirects all were working together correctly. Another task I had involved preparing the accounts for the Orange team, so who were responsible for testing our functionality, the functionality of our environment during pen testing week. And so I just went through and I cleaned up unused accounts in the MariaDB database, and then I just went onto our website and just went through the process of registering the new users. So that included their usernames, emails, and passwords for Orange team, and then after creating the accounts, I just verified that each user could successfully log in through our website. And one of the biggest things I learned from this project is how interconnected networking, front-end development, back-end logic, and databases really are. Even small mistakes such as incorrect JavaScript references or firewall rules can completely stop systems from functioning correctly. And I also learned the importance of methodical troubleshooting. Most of the issues were not major coding failures, but rather small inconsistencies between components. So, breaking problems down into smaller pieces and testing each layer individually made troubleshooting much more manageable for me. And this project also helped push me to gain more experience with JavaScript and backend web development. Before this project, most of my programming experience was primarily in Python, so JavaScript was a new thing for me, as well as PHP. I did have a few experiences with SQL in previous classes, so that wasn't too much of a problem for me. And but yeah, I especially learned about troubleshooting and with connecting all these layer components.
My name is Luis. For my part of the project, I did the network monitor. I'll go over a little bit how I installed it, what uh what we exactly wanted monitored, and just something I learned along the way. For the monitor, I chose the Zabbix because we wanted to ping more than just a machine. We wanted to check our specific services we're running, like the web server, the database, and the DNS. And Zabbix could do all that, and the dashboard showed everything in one place. When I was installing it, I thought it'd be pretty easy and I would just download it, but I ran into a couple issues and I had to go through the built-in software from Cali. But eventually I got it up and running. Once I did, I added our main machines, which was the OPN Sense firewall, our Active Directory, the DNS server, the RHEL database server, and the Windows web server. Each one was set up so that we could check if it was reachable from the Kali machine. And then we went a step further and added checks for specific services on each machine. For the web server, we added checks for HTTP on port 80, HTTPS on port 443. For the database, we added a check on port 3306 to make sure the Maria database was actually running. We also added a DNS check on port 53 and an email check on port 25 for the mail service that we had set up. Once everything was configured, we started picking up the alerts right away, and some of the machines were showing that they were unreachable, but that's actually because that's what was expected of our setup because the Kali was on the WAN side of network and the OPN sense is blocking traffic from getting through to the internal machines. So those alerts were showing that the firewall was actually doing its job. And then we also set up a custom alert for the database servers that would trigger if Maria database went down. Oh, one thing I did learn was that to remember to change the default username and password after installation because that's something they caught and I completely forgot to do. So overall, Zabbix gave us a pretty good view of what was going on across the whole network. It was it was pretty easy to set up uh and get everything covered and monitored and yeah.